Here's the headline on ABC News yesterday. British researcher Wakefield defends link between vaccine and autism. British researcher holds true to his study despite claims of falsified data. Now, they keep running this hoax year after year against him. They pick one doctor, despite the fact that I've had all these other scientists, brain surgeons, epidemiologists on who cite and write books of just test after test with vaccines linked to Crohn's, vaccines linked to brain damage, autoimmune problems. British news, British government tells doctors don't give under fives H1N1 shot because of tenfold increase in seizures. That's London Telegraph. Now, what did Wakefield say decades ago? He did the studies, did the test, found these different antibodies in the gut. That's connected also to other autoimmune problems in the body. That's what all the research shows. He's a pioneer in it. And so they try to target him and claim, and I brought the synopsis up to him, during the break as we were getting him in there. I said, is that accurate? He said, absolutely. Because, see, I've been watching this over the years, and this is how they do it. They perpetrate these hoaxes, like saying Alex Jones, Rush Limbaugh, Ron Paul, we made the guy kill the people. Turns out he was a schizophrenic out of his mind, dressed as a woman who hated George Bush. But reality doesn't matter. So enough of me ranting and raving about this. This is a big hoax that they're running in an attempt to try to discredit people like Dr. Andrew Wakefield. And going over his bio, Dr. Wakefield is an academic gastroenterologist, if I'm pronouncing that right. He received his medical degree from St. Mary's Hospital Medical School, part of the University of London in '81. One of a fourth generation of his family to have studied medicine at the teaching hospital. He qualified as a fellow of the Royal College of Surgeons in '85, and '96 was awarded the Wellcome Trust Traveling Fellowship to study small intestinal transplantation in Toronto, Canada. He has made a fellow of the Royal College of Pathologists in 2001. He has published over 140 original scientific articles, book chapters, and invited scientific commentaries. And it goes on, in the pursuit of possible links between childhood vaccines and intestinal inflammation and neurologic injury in children. Dr. Wakefield lost his job in the Department of Medicine in London's Royal Free Hospital, his country, his career, and his medical license. And the website is callous-disregard.com. And, of course, he knows Jenny McCarthy, and, everybody else has been speaking out against this. But here he is to be able to put it on the record for folks out there, what's really going on, what the real science is. Dr. Wakefield, thanks for joining us.
Alex, thank you very much. Great pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Well, tell us about your research, what you discovered, and what they're trying to do to you right now.
Well, first of all, for your readers and your enlightened viewers who will already know, the allegations made against me by the British freelance journalist Brian Deer are completely false. They're completely false. Not because I say so, because the documents say so. And you've been kind enough to put my book out there in the past and recommended, Callous Disregard, which meticulously takes every one of his allegations, dissects it, and offers a coherent answer that completely rejects his position. Now, the allegations that he's made are over a year old. So why have they now been rehashed? Why have they now been put in front of the media again in a desperate attempt to stop valid scientific research into safety concerns about vaccines? Because that's what this is about. It's about taking the messenger and shooting him because it doesn't fit with their agenda. It compromises their policy, it compromises their bottom line, and they do not want to hear about it. As you rightly point out, there are a whole host of scientists around the world now who have reproduced these findings. And perhaps more importantly, Alex, the people have spoken. Last year, they did a survey at the University of Michigan. 25% of people, parents, believe that vaccines cause autism. Now, that's despite an extraordinarily intensive, expensive, and elaborate campaign against me and against parents who believe there's a problem, a public relations campaign. This year, I've just been sent a document showing that there's a local poll in Ohio, a popular poll showing it's now 61% of parents believe that vaccines cause autism. Now, whatever the respective merits of those polls, what they tell us is that public relations campaign has failed. It's failed because the problem is real. The parent's story is correct, and it's up to scientists and physicians like me to investigate it to the best of our ability to determine what the truth is.
Tell us how you started to investigate and what your findings are. But again, just looking at it, talking to parents who have autistic children, They talk about the baby was fine, 18 months old, running around, giggling, laughing. They get that third round of shots is generally when it's triggered. I guess that overload. They get a fever. Suddenly, they go into that autistic stupor or that whole spectrum, and then associated with it is all sorts of diarrhea and intestinal problems. And so somebody who's a medical doctor who studies the intestines and the gut, why would you not go look at that and try to look at why those two things are correlated? Is that correct?
Oh, you've got it in a nutshell. I mean, what happened on May the 17th, 1995, is the first parent called me and said, Dr. Wakefield, my child was fine. They had their MMR vaccine, they regressed into autism, and they developed terrible gastrointestinal problems. And I know many, many parents, both here and abroad, who are in exactly that same position. And I said, wow, I know nothing about autism because at medical school, it was 1 in 10,000 children. We didn't know anything about it. We weren't taught about it.
In fact, I've seen numbers of 1 in 25,000 30 years ago versus 1 in 10,000. What's the accurate number? What was the old number for autism? And I know before it was like very rare.
It was such a rarity, such an oddity that no one had ways of monitoring it. No one knew. It just was so rare that it was speculation, really, about the precise numbers.
And now they say it's over-reporting, but when I go to a movie theater with my children, I remember going to movies when I was a child, there was no one autistic there. Now they might have several rows filled. I mean, now they have whole wings of public schools. Now I go to the park, and there's autistic children just everywhere. I mean, it's like an epidemic. I mean, and these people aren't faking this. They're completely not in this world.
No, and it's gone now from those numbers, those rare numbers, to over 1 in 100 in this country, 1 in 68 in the UK, and amongst certain populations, like the Somali population in Minneapolis, it's around 1 in 28 children. That is a staggering level of disease. I was on a plane coming back from New York last night, and the child sitting right behind me, who kicked my seat all the way from New York to Austin, had autism.
No, it's the same thing. I fly a lot, and almost every time, or I'm in a restaurant or a movie, you can look and see it's an autistic child, and you'll see their good-looking parents, and you look at the child, they're handsome, they're pretty, but you see them just with their humanity has been stolen from them, and they still got their humanity, but their potential, and it makes me so sick, and we're just supposed to think, oh, well, this is just happening. I mean, sure, everybody's starting to, become autistic, let's ignore it. So you start researching it, doctor.
Yeah, what you do, medicine starts with the history. What does the parent tell you about what happened to their child? That's the beginning of everything. You examine the child, you investigate their symptoms properly. You don't say, your child's got autism, therefore they're bound to have diarrhea 12 times a day. Put them in a corner, forget about them, move on with your life. You do not do that. That's not good medicine. It's not medicine at all. And so what we did at the Royal Free was take these children with clear sickness, clear illness, and investigate their symptoms appropriately. And what we found is that the parents were right. The children had an intestinal disease. And when we treated that disease, as you would treat Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis with anti-inflammatory medication, the children started to get better. They started to speak, they started to smile, they were out of pain, they would sleep at night, and that was the beginning of a fascinating journey, and a very important journey. And others now around the world have replicated our findings. And one of the things, I was on a show the other day where they called me a liar. I think Anderson Cooper called me a liar for saying that the work had been repeated by others around the world. Well, it has. The work with identifying the bowel disease in these children, that's been replicated in Italy, Poland, Canada, the United States.
Well, I mean, I read the international news. It's in prestigious papers constantly that they've replicated. And then they just call you a liar. Stay there, doctor. I want to come back and get into some of those that have replicated it and how this PR campaign is backfiring on them. We'll be right back. Stay with Wakefield, chalice-disregard.com. Here's the book that tells the truth. And it's available on Amazon, you name it. We also sell it at Infowars.com. Andrew J. Wakefield, forward by Jenny McCarthy. Very important. And the way they've demonized Jenny McCarthy, like, oh, she's just doing this for attention. No, she has an autistic child. Or you, how dare you? I mean, they talk to you like you are Satan when you're on these shows. This is your chance, uninterrupted, to counter these people.
Well, thank you very much. The problem is real. It's not going to go away. And the important thing, Alex, what we can say is that there is a bowel disease in many, many of these children, the treatment of which makes them better. So thousands of children have benefited from our observations 15 years ago that were driven by parental insights. It's the parents that drew our attention to this.
What did you find in their intestines? What's going on as best you know? Why does it hit boys 4 to 1?
4 to 1, we don't know why boys, but this is in common with a number of neurological and psychiatric disorders, that they seem to affect boys. Now, it's interesting that estrogen protects the brain. So is it possible that girls have a brain that's protected from this? Girls seem to be less susceptible to infections in early life.
Doctors have always known women are tougher.
Absolutely. They remain that way for the rest of their lives. But so it may be that there are immunological reasons or developmental reasons or genetic reasons why girls are more robust in these circumstances and don't experience the same kind of problem. Nonetheless, what we see is a bowel disease that seems to affect anywhere from the top of the gut right the way down through the bottom. The children are in pain. There's no doubt they're in pain. But of course, they've lost the ability to express that. They can't speak anymore, or they can't communicate in the way that they could. So they can't tell parents that they've got gastrointestinal problems. They can't tell them that they've got tummy pain because they...
What's the trigger in the MMR?
Well, we don't know, and this is what we're looking at. Is it the MMR? We don't know. Do we think that the MMR is implicated? Yes, I do. But I have no proof of that. That's my opinion. And my opinion isn't worth much compared...
I mean, there's all these other studies, too, in like Italy and other places you mentioned. We can go over some of those if you like, but anybody can type in, Italian studies shows link to vaccines and intestinal problems. It'll come up. Or the German studies. I mean, there's so many. I mean, is there any idea what's doing it? I mean, we know that there's this, correlation between vaccines and this problem, but, any idea?
Well, the problem here, Alex, is it's so complicated. It's not just a live viral vaccine that kids are getting, but at the same time they're getting vaccines that have mercury in, like the influenza or the meningococcal vaccine. They're getting vaccines that have aluminum in at high concentrations. What are these neurotoxic substances doing in there? What are these poisons to the immune system actually doing in there? They shouldn't be injected into the bodies of children.
And the gut, of course, has the highest flora of natural bacteria, viruses. So is it causing some type of trigger, or we don't know?
Well, it could well be. So you've got all this combination of toxic substances being loaded into children. There could be any kind of synergistic interaction. If you went to the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, and you said, I've got these 3 blood pressure drugs. I want to put them in the same capsule and give them to patients, they'd throw you out of the door. Why? Because all your patients would die. Because the interaction between those 3 blood pressure drugs would kill your patients. They would drop their blood pressure into their boots. And yet, when it comes to vaccines, they get past all of this kind of regulatory control. They can put 3 viruses, 4 viruses in. They give pentavalent, heptavalent vaccines with all kinds of things in. And there is no proper regulation of safety standards for vaccines. Beyond that, the manufacturers are not liable. So it's a great market. Why would you not get involved if there's no liability and only profit?
And now most of them are being made in China.
Now, I didn't know that.
Yeah, a lot of the vaccines are being made in China. So think about that with the record of the melamine and the rest of it. So you were telling me during the break about some of these shows, the way they're going after you and building these straw men up.
Well, I think that what's obvious to me is that they're extremely angry. They're extremely angry because they've read this story from the journalists in the UK. They've bought into the idea that it must be true. They don't care that there's another side to this. They don't care that 89% of parents in this country put vaccine safety research as their #1 medical research priority. 89%. Again, the people have spoken, but they don't care about that. What they care about is pinning this on one person to blame them for what has happened. And
because of your courage, you've been picked as the patsy. Plus, you come off as very credible. You have a great medical pedigree, all these awards and laurels. They think if they can cut your head off, that'll scare everybody else. Just like with the global warming, they want to crucify a few researchers as they tried a decade ago, but that backfired too. Now it's been proven to be a fraud.
I think this is real. What they do is they isolate me and they show the rest of the medical profession, the scientific profession, if you get involved in this, this is what's going to happen to you. Your career is going to be destroyed. You're going to lose your career. You're going to lose your job. You're going to lose your medical license, and you're going to lose your country. Well, for me, if that happens, okay. But every time I see a kid with autism, I think I don't have a problem. I think I've got a job to do and I'm going to do it. And I don't know whether vaccines cause autism or not, but I am going to try and find out. I'm going to do my very best to find out because the issue is too important not to.
Absolutely. And when we come back, you were telling me during the break how they had some family on who didn't take a vaccine. They were trying to blame you. You've been very moderate is why they hate you, because you come off as credible. You just said, I want to research this more. And so they go after you because you're so effective. And so we'll talk about that. We'll talk about how we can help children. What we have found is helping them. We'll be right back with our guest, Dr. Andrew Wakefield. Live, ladies and gentlemen, callous disregard, autism and vaccines, the truth behind a tragedy. Andrew J. Wakefield, forward by Jenny McCarthy. Excellent book. Now, you can cover whatever you want in the 30 minutes we've got left, but I'd like you first to go through their lies, go through the things they've done. The first one I threw out to you was, I remember reading, it's incredible, hoax, doctor exposed, and I read, in studies, he paid people for blood samples. And I'll go, well, wait, every research study I've heard of, or almost all of them, people are paid to be part of the research study. But then you went further. It turned out you didn't even do that. So, I mean, it's just, but they're playing on people's ignorance to even try that. So let's talk, Doctor, specifically about the type of fraud you're talking about here.
Certainly, Alex. So one of the allegations that's been made and has been repeated in the media is that the Lancet study of 1998, those 12 children who had autism and bowel disease, that somehow I paid them to take part in the study. Nothing could be further from the truth. They were clinical patients seen at the Royal Free as part of the National Health Service, and they were investigated according to their symptoms. I paid them nothing at all. The truth is that as a later study, looking at blood measurements in a research setting, I asked my children if they would be prepared to give me a blood sample, and they said yes. And their friends at a birthday party also agreed. It was done with fully informed parental and child consent. Many of the parents were doctors. And so they allowed their children to have a blood sample taken. The kids were fine, and they got the equivalent of about $7.50 for their trouble. And that has been blown up into some kind of bloodbath that was, or that I had paid these patients to come to the Royal Free to be part of some litigation in order to bring down the vaccine manufacturers. Nothing could be further from the truth. Another allegation is, and this occurred yesterday on Good Morning America, is they put up a clip of a family who, apparently according to my research, did not give their children the Haemophilus influenza B vaccine, the Hib vaccine. Now, I've never said a single word about the Hib vaccine. I've never mentioned the Hib vaccine. My work was related to the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine. And now they're blaming me because parents have not given their children the Hib vaccine. I mean, that is the most contrived piece of journalism I have seen in a long, long while.
It's straw man. They don't attack Andrew J. Wakefield. They attack this made-up creature that they then tear apart for the world.
Yes, it reminds me of that Disney film, Beauty and the Beast. The scene, kill the beast, kill the beast. This is like Salem, the visceral response that they're trying to whip up in the public to try and crush this dissent, to try and stop valid vaccine safety research taking place, is completely out of proportion and is not doing any service to the American people or indeed the children of the world.
Well, how much do Western vaccine makers make a year? I've seen numbers of $8–10 billion. I mean, do you think they're going to let research doctors start actually showing the carnage that they've caused? Do you think they're going to let anyone get in the way of that business? I mean, look at the ads. Probably half the ads on network TV are drug companies who have their vaccine divisions. And so it's a complete conflict of interest for all of these networks that are savaging you. They're on the payroll.
Yeah, there is a big problem here. One is that they are allowed to advertise directly to the consumer. That doesn't occur in the UK, but giving the, ask your doctor about this drug, getting it out there, they begin to own the broadcasting companies. They own the TV companies because they depend upon their advertising. They
even make up stuff like restless leg syndrome, which is now admitted to be a fraud. I mean, they just make things up and engage in pure quackery, and then you, a prestigious, doctor doing research, you're the bad man. But they've got a problem. In fact, we can put this up on screen. London Telegraph, government tells doctors don't give flu shot after tenfold increase in fits, and then that means in England seizures. The next line says tenfold increase in seizures in under 5s, and then they found, it's boys particularly again. Something's happening with boys. They're having these seizures. Now, Australia came out and said, yeah, we had deaths because of this H1N1. That's their own government having to admit it and suspending it. Poland suspending it. They had deaths of the homeless, 30 plus just in the test of a bird flu vaccine. I mean, something's going, and now the British Medical Journal, I had their head editor on, they found it was all a fraud in 2009 pushing that shot. The Wolfgang Wodarg, who was the head of the EU Commission, doctor, he felt, so it seems like you are the sacrificial lamb because they're burning in flames right now. So again, if they can intimidate others by trying to smash you, they win. But it seems to be backfiring. But I mean, your comments on these flotillas of just news coming out. Oh, we gave a polio vaccine in Africa. Oh, in Asia. Oh, in Latin America. It was live. It killed people. Oh, the U.S. government secretly was shooting people up with syphilis. Oh, and I mean, you know, all this is coming out. So people are like, ooh, we don't trust you. And they say, no, it's all lies. This guy, Dr. Wakefield, he made it up. It's his fault. He did it. But that isn't reality.
No, it's not at all. And the problem is so serious and so prevalent that scientists cannot afford to roll over. Physicians cannot afford to roll over in the face of this kind of bullying tactic and not do the work in the interests of their patients. That would be absolutely unacceptable. And that is what I intend to continue doing. And I'm not going to go away. This work has to be done. And I think what we need is the medical profession, the scientific profession, to stand up and be counted in this respect. And it's interesting, I was recently at a vaccine safety conference in Jamaica, where experts from all over the world, France, Israel, the UK, the US, Canada, came together to express their mutual concerns about vaccine safety policy. The cost of the amount of money invested in vaccine promotion in this country compared with the amount of money spent on vaccine safety research is way out of proportion. Billions compared with a few million. And this is not my word. This is the word of the committee that recommends vaccination policy.
And they don't like doctors being doctors. They want to let the CEOs of the drug makers now engage in medical policy. That's what Obamacare does more and more, is it lets bureaucrats set policy and take power from the real experts, the doctors.
Yeah. So it's a vaccine safety first priority. Why would you not put safety first? If you're going to administer these vaccines to every child in the world, potentially, safety must be the priority. So Ralph Nader was not anti-car. He was for safer cars. I'm not anti-vaccine. I am for safer vaccines. And that has got to be the priority. Not profit, not bottom line, not policy, but putting the health of children first. There are nearly 30 million children in this country alone who have a chronic immune or inflammatory disorder, which when you and I were young didn't exist.
Well,
very, very rare.
Dr. Blaylock, who is a prestigious retired brain surgeon, he's done research and he sources all the other research, quoting it on air when he's joined us. But he says, just looking at the brain, it's clear that the adjuvants, the aluminum, the mercury, but the virus itself, or in other cases the bacteria itself, is causing, because it's not going through the skin or the mucous membrane the way it's absorbed, it's causing an autoimmune inflammation. And he's saying it's in the guts, it's in other parts of the body, but it's also in the brain. And that's why so often the kids will have a seizure driving home after the shots. I mean, we know that this is going on, and they just try to ignore it. But now that dam is breaking. I mean, what do you I mean, I understand you're being watched like a hawk, so you don't like to speculate in any way. But clearly, what are the type of inflammations we're seeing that magically pop up after vaccination?
Well, there's the sort of thing that we're seeing are asthma, eczema, hay fever, insulin-dependent diabetes, autism, neurodevelopmental disorders. Are these linked to autism? To vaccines? We're not sure. But is there evidence that they may be? Yes, absolutely. There was one study, a very big study, 11,500 children out of the University of Manitoba, showing that if you just delayed the administration of the DPT vaccine, then you halve the risk of asthma. That's an extraordinary observation. You've just delayed it by 2 months. You don't have to get rid of the vaccine.
Don't the Japanese, for like 10 years, make them wait to 2.5 to give shots?
I don't know, but if that's what they do, then that's, I believe, a very wise policy.
We'll continue with other studies, because I've interviewed, like Dr. Eisenstein. He's reported there's hundreds of thousands of Amish in Illinois, and autism is unknown amongst them. I mean, is there any credibility to that in your research?
Well, yes, the fact that the Amish do not vaccinate, except in rare circumstances, and they don't appear to have autism. Now, has anyone done a study on that? No. Does it need to be done? Absolutely it does. We need to do a study that compares the long-term health outcomes of fully vaccinated children with those who are not vaccinated. That study has to be done. Parents have every right to expect
the vaccine makers fight that.
They have been fighting.
Wonder why.
But, what's interesting is that they've said that all the science is in, there's no need to do any more, there is no link between, for example, thimerosal, the mercury preservative, and autism. Well, when this has been systematically analysed and all the papers that are relevant, that generate data, that present data, have been looked at, 74% of those papers say, yes, there is a link, a positive link. So what people are being told and what is the truth is very, very different. And one more thing is that the vaccine courts in this country have been settling cases of vaccine-induced autism or autistic spectrum disorder since the early 90s. So you've got one branch of the government, the CDC, saying there's no problem at all, and then you've got the Department of Justice settling these cases. And I can give your readers and your listeners and viewers some names to look up if they don't believe it. Hannah Poling, Bailey Banks, Misty Hyatt, and Mrs. Hyatt would be delighted to come on your program.
I want to get her on.
And she would talk about how her daughter was rendered autistic by an MMR vaccine and was awarded $5 million. Hannah Poling just been given a lifetime award of $20 million for vaccines causing her autism. So,
well, I have friends who've had a happy 18-month-old running around talking, giggling, and then the kid's just gone. I mean, they might as well have been hit by a chemical weapon after that third round of shots. And it's almost everyone you talk to. I can be at a hotel on vacation. There's a family, they're in the pool, the hot tub. They got 3 or 4 kids. One of them's autistic, sitting there, nodding in the chair, not having a good time. And I'll say, let me ask, when did your son? 18 months, third round of shots. He had a convulsion on the way home in the car. And then what I've read about is sometimes when they bring them back to the hospital, then they try to take your kid saying, oh, there's inflammation on the brain. You must have beaten them or something. I mean, that's even more incredible. It just makes my head spin.
Well, Alex, this is a very important point you just brought up, because I am now dealing with cases of Munchausen syndrome by proxy, where the children have been damaged, ostensibly by a vaccine exposure until proven otherwise, and yet the parents are being blamed for the damage to the children. And more than that, parents are treating their children and reversing their autism to a greater or lesser extent, getting them better. So they lose their autism diagnosis, and then they're being told that they made up the diagnosis of autism in the first place. They were diagnosed by professional doctors. The parents are being told that they made up the diagnosis and that the children never had autism in the first place. And so this is one of the grossest injustices I've ever witnessed in my life. Your child is initially damaged, and you have to suffer and grieve with that, and then suddenly you're blamed for causing it in the first place. It's absolutely staggering, and that kind of thing has got to stop.
I know you can't diagnose people over the radio, but in individual cases, obviously we can't conclusively prove what's causing it. It's kind of like if somebody walked out on the road and got run over by a Mack truck, and then you walk out and their body's smashed all over the side of the road. A car probably did this, but did we see it do it? No. And there's people out there saying, don't look at cars, don't. So that's happening. But what do we know is reversing the intestinal problems? What is detoxing them? And what do those success stories point towards?
Well, good medicine starts with the history, the examination, and the clinical findings. So from my perspective, it was of gastrointestinal problems which were confirmed to be of an inflammatory nature when we took little biopsies from the intestine. Now, we know a lot about treating inflammation from the years of treating Crohn's disease and colitis. So we had an opportunity here to intervene by treating these children with anti-inflammatories. So the mild anti-inflammatory drugs that were used in Crohn's work very well. These are aspirin-like drugs, but ones which heal the intestine. The diet has been extremely valuable. This is a gluten, casein-free diet. If there was one thing that I would recommend that parents start with, it would be the gluten, casein-free diet. Now, people have said for years, there's no evidence, that's just parents making it up, or it's dangerous. Actually, now there are randomized controlled clinical trials showing benefit. And if anyone wants to look that up, the name is Whiteley et al. Look up that paper and you will see a big study showing benefit from the diet. Take it to your doctor, show it to them, and use it as evidence-based medicine that the diet is certainly worth trying. So a gluten, casein-free diet, and the value of that is that it's in the parents' hands. It doesn't involve giving a drug.
And hey, what's it going to lose trying it? I mean, why not try it?
Yes, I think that's absolutely right. It's something that the parents can be in control of, and it's something that we have seen produces dramatic benefit. It starts with better sleeping, better bowel function, better behavior, and children can progress and make great strides through that kind of approach.
Now, getting back to Crohn's, and again, I'm going from memory here, but I remember reading that going back 30, 40, 50 years ago, it was this disorder was almost unheard of or hadn't even really been invented, the name. And now I'm in grocery stores. I'm in restaurants. I've got a couple people that work here who are young. And I've read not just some of your research, but other research pointing towards that they find different antibodies connected to the vaccine in the intestines with the people that have Crohn's and Crohn's-like problems, that now moving into irritable bowel, that, you know, huge parts of the population. I mean, you're the expert on this. Tell us about that link.
Well, Crohn's is how I really got into this autism bowel link, because we had for years been looking at the possibility that Crohn's may be linked to the vaccines. Now, that remains a question. It's out there. The work has been, some has been for, some has been against.
But Crohn's is proliferating.
Crohn's is epidemic. Just like autism is epidemic now, the Crohn's epidemic started probably in the 1920s, 30s, 40s. It suddenly started escalating, but it wasn't heard of in children until the mid-60s. In the mid-60s, it appeared in children. I remember one of the first cases, in fact, a chap who's become a very good friend of mine, when he was 16, he developed Crohn's, and people used to come from all over the north of England to see him, because it was so unusual. Now we see Crohn's in children as young as 1 and 2 and 3. Now that is extraordinary. So what has happened? Like all of these other inflammatory and immune diseases, it's going through the roof. Why? We don't know the answer, but it certainly needs to be investigated. Something in the environment must be doing this, because it's not genetics.
And if we have tens of thousands of anecdotal parents, kids having convulsions and basically being mildly to seriously, you know, brain damaged after they take shots, gee, you know, I mean, right there. And then you have all these other studies that I've had doctors on about not the guts, the brain, separately talking about that. I mean, do we have any idea what's causing this inflammation in the brain? Blaylock says it's the adjuvants.
Yes, well, I think what my position is that there's some link between the bowel and the brain. What's happening in the bowel in many children is driving inflammation in the brain or changes within the brain. And that's entirely consistent with Dr. Blaylock's thinking that there is some kind of systemic inflammatory response that is driving a problem in the brain.
Well, he says that's what Alzheimer's is just that the brain is just inflamed chronically. And he says, you know, if people will just get off MSG and all the other things that are doing it, before it's too late, they could be all right. Alcohol and other things inflame it, but once it gets to that certain point, it's over.
Yes, it may be that you set up a sort of circular pathology, a circular disease that you can't get out of. Now, I don't think that that's true. I think that there are ways of interrupting it and getting people better.
Oh, no, he was saying that as long as it doesn't go too long. He just said at certain points, you know, there's so much brain damage from it, but he's the brain guy, you're the stomach guy, and I'm the country bumpkin. Doc, we're going to come right back on the other side and get more into this. This is such powerful information. And if you've got time, I want to get, because we had you on 5 minutes late, I want to go 5 minutes over today with Dr. Andrew Wakefield. The book, of course, is Callous Disregard. It's available on the online video bookstore at Infowars.com and better bookstores everywhere. And what are some of the websites we should tell folks to visit? Because written here on my deal, it says callous-disregard.com. Is that the best place to go?
That's one place where the book is for sale, and there's sort of some backstory. Vaccinesafetyfirst.com has just gone up, where journalists can go and get brief soundbite information plus links to the various papers that we're talking about. So that's a good place to go. The National Vaccine Information Center website.
Vaccinesafetyfirst.com. And then they can go there, and when they see Good Morning America saying there's no other studies and that he's a lie, you can see all the big studies and all the concern and all the news about it at vaccinesafetyfirst.com.
Correct.
All right. We've got about 4 minutes left here, then 5 minutes the next segment. You've got the floor for other key points you want to cover, Doctor.
Well, I think one of the key things, Alex, is why do they have to go after me in the first place? Why do they have to try and stop the vaccine safety research that was taking place at the Royal Free Hospital in London? And what I discovered from a whistleblower, a senior government health official in 1997, is that when England introduced the MMR vaccine at the end of the 1980s, they introduced a vaccine which was knowingly unsafe. In the same month that it was licensed in the UK, it was withdrawn in Canada for safety reasons. It was causing meningitis. And he was brought across from Canada to advise the UK government on whether they should introduce this vaccine or not. He said no. They went ahead and introduced it. It was cheaper. It was made by SmithKline Beecham, the local company. Were those the reasons? I don't know. But he advised them not to introduce it, and they did. And what happened was that 4 years later it had to be withdrawn overnight because just as in England, just as in Canada, just as in Japan and Australia, it was causing meningitis. Children were damaged. And children were damaged at 100 times the rate that was predicted by their surveillance methods, which were inadequate. Now, why was that vaccine ever allowed onto the market? What did happen, and this will ring bells with you, is it changed its name. That's the only thing that changed from Canada to the UK. It went from Trivarix to Pluzarix. So why would you change the name of a product? Same vaccine, different name. It had to be withdrawn because it was causing damage. And he told me he knew that many, many children were injured by that vaccine. Will they ever be compensated? No. Will they ever be acknowledged? No. How did it come about? Because the vaccine manufacturer themselves expressed concern, according to him, about introducing the vaccine. They didn't want to do it because they were having problems in Canada. They had a liability. So the government gave them an indemnity. That's what it appears. The government gave them an indemnity, underwrote their liability.
Well, we have that here with the Vaccine Damage Fund in the U.S.
But there was no, as far as I can gather, there was no ministerial approval for this in the UK.
What about the 2000 meeting that ABC News even covered in 2002, where you have the CDC meeting and the head of it's going, I'd never give a vaccine to my granddaughter. This has damaged millions. We got to cover this up. I mean, those minutes got released by, who's the congressman whose grandson got autism? And then he basically stormed the CDC and got the documents?
Dan Burton.
Yeah, Burton. I mean, that's smoking gun right there.
Yeah, that was an extraordinary situation where they took data which showed there was a clear increased risk, and they cut those data down, they changed them after the fact to produce no risk at all. Now, if I had done that, if I had designed a study, got a result I didn't want, and then after the fact had chopped it and changed it and moved it around until I got no effect or got an effect, then I would be vilified, just as I've been vilified now. But because a government agency does it, then it's perfectly acceptable.
Well, your study's been replicated in spades. That's why they're coming after you.
That's correct. The bowel disease that we discovered originally has been confirmed by other people. Is there a link between the vaccine and the disease? That work is going on. It needs to be done. It's not going to stop. And the kind of study like the vaccinated, unvaccinated study, those are the sorts of things that need to be done to establish whether or not there is a causal association. Well,
I mean, I'll say this. I've got children. I know there's science in vaccine technology, and I would like to have vaccines that I could trust. But, I mean, the fact they have liability protection in this stream of carnage, you can't trust them. We'll be back in 60 seconds, fourth hour straight ahead. I'm Alex Jones. Dr. Andrew Wakefield is our guest. We're almost out of time. 5 more minutes left with him, then we're going into retransmission. Trying to quantify what these autoimmune responses are and all these countless other studies in other parts of the body, the pancreas, the liver, the brain. But we were trying to, during the break, to talk about what is this connection to the stomach, this highly volatile area of the autoimmune system, obviously the front line, and tying into the brain. And I think you quantified it excellent. Break that down.
Well, the brain, the intestine is really the first point of exposure to many, many toxins, bacteria, alcohol, any number of toxins. It's got to be working properly. It's also the biggest immune organ in the body. It's also got more neurons, more nerve cells in it than the brain. So it's a crucial interface between us and the environment. Now, people say, I don't understand this gut-brain link. Tell me how it works. Well, alcohol is a very good example. Alcohol is a neurotoxin. It poisons the brain. We take it through the gut. It has to get through the intestine, through the bloodstream, to the brain. So there's a very good example of how a gut-brain neurotoxicity can operate. And people then start to understand how that might take place, how that might be working. So there is nothing conceptually difficult about what we're talking about. Does it happen in other diseases? Yes. Patients with celiac disease and allergic sensitivity to wheat, they have a number of neurological problems, including dementia and seizures. But it all starts in the intestine. So that is a very, very fruitful area, not only to approach the mechanism of this disease, but also help treat children to get them better. So that has been my approach and will continue to be my approach to this.
So something toxic is being triggered in the gut, and it causes neurologically. Do we know what's going on in the brain? I mean, they can deny it's a vaccine, but what's happening to their brains?
We still don't know. We still don't know. We know that function is being altered. We know that growth of the brain and development of the brain are being altered. How is that happening? We don't know. And there are many people who've got some very, very good ideas about things called excitotoxins causing inflammation and damage to the brain. But at this stage, we're still looking.
Yeah, that's what Blaylock goes over and all the other doctors he sources on this this inflammation. And wow, well, we've got about 2 minutes left. Any other tidbits that are important for parents and people out there?
Well, my final message is really to parents, and that is read. Please go and read. There are two sides to this debate. Read both sides of the debate. Go to the CDC's website. Go to the National Vaccine Information Center and other people's websites. Get the information. Find yourself a sympathetic doctor and talk them through your concerns about the vaccines. Ask to see the product inserts. Read the product inserts to see if there is, for example, the mercury preservative thimerosal in there.
Because they lied for years and said that they'd taken it out.
Well, they advised that it was taken out. There was no order saying, this is a neurotoxin, it should not be in there, take it out. But at the same time that they took it out, or advised that it should be taken out, they put it back in the influenza vaccine. So
at 4 times what it had been.
That's right. So pregnant mothers and young children getting the influenza vaccine containing mercury. So you're taking it out on the one hand and putting it back in the other. That makes no sense.
And then they say, well, you get the same amount in a sandwich, a tuna sandwich, but talking to endocrinologists, people that toxicologists, they explain this is injected directly into the blood, not going through the stomach that's designed to filter some of that out. And it's not like mercury in fish that's biologically bound, is the way it's explained to me. So it's much different, especially when it's connected to the pathogen, which then supercharges it.
Yeah, I think that's right. If people are saying that, and they are saying that it's no worse than having a tuna sandwich, that is grossly misleading. And that's only either being said through ignorance about mercury metabolism, or it's deliberately deceptive. And that's most unfortunate. So my final message is for the authorities, because what you are doing is compromising public confidence in vaccine safety policy across the board. And unless you address parental issues, unless you address their concerns, and it's 89% of American parents that we're talking about, then you are going to attrite vaccine uptake across the board, and there are going to be problems. And at the end of the day, it will be you, that is the authorities, who are responsible for it.
Dr. Wakefield, powerful interview. Look forward to having you back soon. Hopefully you can get Jenny McCarthy on the show. I've heard she's a listener from some of her friends, but that's yet to be seen. Wow, they're trying to crucify you, but I believe they're failing. They're trying to scare other researchers away from this info. We appreciate your courage, Doctor. Great having you.
Thank you very much.
Great job, crew.